Hi, and welcome to the Serial Killers podcast. It's a podcast all about the pests, diseases and problems that affect arable crops. Each week we're going to do a deep dive into one of those particular problems. Hi Josie.
Hello.
So our next podcast is about ergot.
Yes, the disgusting ergot.
I feel like we've talked about ergot a lot in the past because it appears on a lot of weeds and all sorts. So
black grass especially.
Yeah. So ergot is caused by the fungus Claviceps purpurea.
That's right.
Caused purpurea because it does, as it develops, it turns a purple colour.
Mm-hmm.
No idea why it's called Claviceps. Sounds like a medical instrument to me. But
there are different types of fungi within the Claviceps family. But the purpurea is the one that majorly is a concern to agricultural crops.
Yeah, I think there's one called Africana which affects sorghum and maize and things like that. So that's an interesting. It's an issue because it causes not so much yield loss, although it does cause yield loss. It's crop quality.
Yes.
Yeah, and so the fungus develops a sclerotium, just like
that's right, sclerosis.
Yeah, white mold. So if we think about white mold in rape crops, this is the equivalent in cereals, but it's much more of an issue, and it causes this horrible disease in humans if you were to ingest.
That's right.
It's called ergotism.
That's right.
And on the face of it, ergotism sounds like a bit of a laugh.
Oh, no, God, no.
LSD.
No, absolutely not.
But it's not, no.
You only get the LSD effect after your fingers and toes have dropped off and you've had severe vomiting, diarrhea.
Internal damage to your kidneys and liver.
Yeah,
and
then you get the lovely hallucinogenic
effect. Yeah, so you don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be eating ergot. But they did for a long while. A lot of people ate ergot.
Yeah, 1938, a doctor called Albert Hoffman, he extracted the LSD element out of it.
Yeah, and I think it was only until the very late 19th century that it was actually the life cycle of ergot was discovered, and that it was this that was causing ergotism, and so that's very late, and it was causing child loss and people to die in their thousands in the medieval times, and it's particularly a problem in ryegrass. Do I mean ryegrass or do I mean rye? So when you make rye bread, it's dark, and so you can't see the contamination with the ergot, and that's why rye is an issue. So you'll say, oh, it affects rye and other cereal crops, but it's the reason it's a problem in rye is not because rye is particularly prone to this. It's because if it's in rye, you've really got a problem because you cannot see it on the bread. Yeah, and so lots of incidences of witchcraft have been down to ergot in the past, haven't they?
That's right.
It's rare on oats.
Rare on oats, yeah.
We keep on coming across this as well, Josie, that a lot of the things that affect oats don't affect.
That's right, I
cereals.
found that.
Yeah. And so oats have got loads of problems of their own, but
they don't seem to have the problems that everything else has.
So if I was farming, I'd have an oat in my rotation and I'd have wheat in my rotation because I'd have two cereals. And oats, because they seem to be so resistant to a lot of the wheat, the barley, the rye diseases and pests, then that's a good one. So its life cycle, it infects through the flowers, which is unusual. Isn't it?
It falls to the ground when it's harvested, and then in the spring it germinates and it produces mushroom type spores,
like tiny microscopic mushrooms.
Yeah. From which you get the spores, which is the stroma.
Yep.
And then these spores are spread by wind. They germinate in the flowers, affecting the ovaries. Yeah. Yeah.
Travel down the pollen tube, and
affecting the ovaries, and then the infection leads to a secondary spores, conidia.
Yep.
Which then is disgusting. It produces honeydew, which is that horrible black sticky stuff.
I didn't realise this. Yeah, it's weird.
And then that leads to saprophytic molds.
Yeah, and also the insects come and feed off the honeydew. And
that's
then
right.
Almost like pollination, take it from plant to plant, which is pretty disgusting, really. So an all-round crazy fungus, and it feeds off the ovary and the developing seed, And you can actually grow it in a lab by just crushing up some seeds, keeping them wet, and you can grow ergot like that.
They're generally 1 centimetre long, but they can grow up to 2 centimetres long.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen massive ones on blackgrass.
Mm-hmm.
So when my local farmer, when he goes round harvesting his wheat, there's a pond, and obviously the blackgrass wasn't touched around there, and then normally before it gets severe, it wouldn't appear, but it's as you get really, really old blackgrass plants, loads of it covered in ergot. It's similar to sort of corn smuts. Have you ever come across corn smut?
But apparently they're delicious and they're a speciality.
Yeah, in Mexican food they have.
Yeah. A lot of people had corn smuts this year.
Yeah.
So whether it was the weather conditions.
Would you eat it?
Probably not.
No.
They don't look very nice, but apparently they're delicious.
Yeah. I'm just back from a holiday in Sardinia, and there the local delicacy is maggot-ridden cheese, but it's illegal to sell it to tourists.
So what do you do? Do you just sort of like help yourself and put a donation in?
No, I just pretend to be Italian. And, I can pass off as Italian. So yeah,
absolutely.
Pest and disease-ridden food.
What was it like?
Popular. No, I didn't. I couldn't find it anywhere. But yeah. So back to ergot. Guess what? Rotation is key.
It is.
Yeah, like all pest and disease and weeds, and I think
the seed only remains viable on the surface of the soil for 1 year.
Yep, the sclerotium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, easy for me to say. Keeping your seeds clean is obviously going to be key.
Mm-hmm.
And also grass weeds will be an issue.
Yeah.
So mowing, you don't have to get rid of the weeds, but if you mow any significant weeds, stop them from flowering, that's going to be key. Fungicides are an issue because this is a disease that affects very, very late on in the crop. So this is affecting flowers that are developing into seeds. And so even if there were fungicides available, the pre-harvest interval is going to be normally it's 30, 60 days. And so that can really limit what you can apply, if at all. Did you come across any fungicides that can be used?
Pardon? Fungicides, no.
No, I don't think so. And one of the key areas that is interesting is that they're looking at resistance. So breeding in resistance to ergot, which isn't in many varieties at the moment, but there is partial resistance in some winter wheat varieties that have been found by NIAB in Cambridge, and they have found total resistance in some durum wheat varieties. Okay. So there is hope that we could get resistance crops soon, and with things like CRISPR technology, which is this new, not genetically modified but genetically modified technique, this could be an area where we see massive development soon. Yeah. So
really, I was quite surprised at reading this. A standard minimum is 3 pieces of ergot in 500 grams of grain. Yeah,
so anyone who's buying grain will test your grain to make sure that, and then they can reject it. So,
but if you're going for the higher voluntary minimum, it's 1 piece per 1,000 grams of grain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's something that's looked at, and especially in you've got food crop and then cattle feed, and then
Yeah. So obviously, if it's contaminated and it contains 70.01 grams of ergot per kilo, it's forbidden by law for human consumption. However, it can be sold for animal feed.
But it will still affect.
It still affects the animals.
Yeah. So it's not one of these ones where it's like.
No.
Yeah.
Apparently, 2021 and 22 have been 2 bad years in a row for ergot.
Yeah.
Well, good for ergot, but bad for the farmer.
Yeah. And is that because it's so wet? Do you think? Yeah. Because it likes cool conditions.
Yeah, certainly the weather conditions.
Yeah, wet, cool conditions during flowering. I think that's key. So anything that allows germination on the flower, a fungus is always going to love wet and cool and damp. So that's probably. So I would imagine 2023 was good for farmers, though. This year, was it?
I don't know. Probably don't know yet because.
I would imagine because it was dry when the flowers were out. Really dry, and then it only got wet when they were trying to harvest. So.
I suppose reports and things are only just going to start coming in about that because harvests haven't been long brought in.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've read reports that like harvests are down like 5% this year. But then our colleague Matthew's been out seeing farmers in the northwest, and they've said they've had a bumper harvest. I guess because like it's so wet up there normally anyway that a dry year.
Well, we had quite a wet summer, but then dry autumn.
Yeah, we had a dry June and a wet July.
Yeah.
So cool. Any other facts about ergot?
Yeah, ergot is really not craning its neck in at all, is it? No. Julius Caesar lost legions of soldiers to ergot poisoning.
Really?
Yeah, so it's been around a long, long time. And like you said about the witches, ergot poisoning is a proposed explanation of bewitchment.
Oh, right.
Because that led to thousands of deaths and burnings at the stake of so-called witches in Europe during the Dark Ages.
And it's been used in the past. So extracts of ergot have been used to induce abortions as well as cause abortions.
I tried to Google that because it did say about medicinal qualities, but it kept coming up with the I wasn't allowed to view it.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, of course. And then to stem bleeding in childbirth is one potential use. They're looking at it in Parkinson's. And they're looking at it in autism as well. These ergot-derived alkaloids. So
it's one of these things that might be just a cure for something, but for everything else, don't go around chewing it any time now.
Well, yeah, a lot of medicines like that are very toxic. So, yeah, ergot. There we go. Anything else on ergot?
No, I think that's about it. But there's more information about ergot on the Blackgrass podcast, isn't there?
Yep. So it's and it's one of these diseases that we can't use to kill other weeds because it just affects loads of cereals. So apart from oats. So there you go. But oats has its own type of ergot. So I think, yeah. Yeah. Brilliant.
So who knew that LSD was extracted from ergot?
Yeah. I know. I'm not sure if oats does have its own type of ergot. I'll look into it. But yeah. There we go. Until next time. Thank you very much, Josie.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.